Hi, and welcome to the Sudden Death Checklist podcast number 3. I'm Jason Holman. I'm here today with Jack Veale. Jack has over 30 years advising closely held family owned businesses with ownership and management succession issues. Welcome to the podcast, Jack.
Thanks, Jason, and thank you all for attending this next seminar podcast for us. And this stage of the process is you're now in the midst of a very emotional experience, and it could be that you have a family member that died of the COVID-19 virus, and you and your family are struggling through this because typically they're very sudden. Uh, and you, what you now know is that if you had the checklist, that you are the executor or trustee, and our checklists are now live, which means you now are the training that you've done in the past two chapters are now coming through with your knowledge and your effort to manage your family members through this process. The next few slides in our checklist will help you, the survivor, navigate through those emotional and stressful conditions. With our workbook, you're now prepared and trained. Okay? One of the things that's important is that your spouse, your family member may have died at home. And if that's the case, the first thing you have to do is call the police, 911, because you need to have a documentation from the police department that the body was actually dead, and not murdered or any of that stuff. Uh, when you find it in the checklist, you'll be starting to assign people to the phone trees. So you're going to be making calls to the family, key managers, advisors, and personal relationships, friends and neighbors. You're going to need to call the funeral home or organ donation because you need to process that body pretty quick. You want to make sure that deceased personal belongings, such as jewelry, are carried at the time of death, are there because people do steal from dead bodies, especially credit cards and driver's license. And so if they're not accounted for, cancel those credit cards quickly. Secure the home, hide the valuables, assign a house sitter for children and the pets. Call the church, temple, or stated religious organization that you'll find in the workbook. From the checklist on page 2-5, you're going to prepare for the funeral ceremony. So there's things that veterans have a program, and so do you. Details are found in the owner's funeral checklist on page S3-7 and S4-7. Arrange for the ceremony and/or celebration service so that you can publish it. And then you prepare the obituary to send to the newspapers, funeral home, arranging the reception, burial clothes, jewelry, and all those kinds of things that you're going to find in chapters S3-6 through S4-6. Order 10 to 15 death certificates and call the insurance company and schedule the attorney to read the will. These are things that you need to do now in the midst of all the emotions and things like that. In podcast 4, we're going to cover the post-funeral checklist. Jason?
Thank you, Jack. All those things are incredibly important. And as Jack said, in podcast number 4, we're going to look at the checklist that you need for after the funeral, after that traumatic event. What do you need to know about cleaning out closets, selling heirlooms, and moving out? What do you need to know about gathering and reviewing the will and the trust documents? If there is no trust, how do you prepare for probate? What about taking custody of the estate or trust's assets? We're going to talk about administering the estate or trust, the financial reporting and the tax filings. We'll talk about estate and trust distributions, all of those things. And following that podcast, we'll tackle the podcast concerning the business checklist and the veterans checklist. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Take care.